Hello, everyone. This is Ravi Kumar, your host for the day. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing you to one of the preeminent authorities in the field of leadership. She has a very interesting take on the leadership, and how she integrates multiple aspects of the humans, and how she kind of brings the leadership in a much more holistic way. Just to introduce Kathleen Seeley is an acclaimed speaker, author, transformational coach, facilitator, and corporate leadership consultant. For the past 20 years, Kathleen Seeley has been working with individuals and corporate leadership teams, facilitating game-changing transformation in a leadership capacity and team functioning. The tools she shares are practical, and her experiential method for teaching makes them immediately applicable. Her work is targeted to create sustainable, value-driven cultures and develop values-based leaders. A values-based approach is emerging among leadership around the world as a pathway to a more stable and sustainable human future. A focus on values takes up to a level of awareness beyond the short term and enables insight into meaning and purpose. Kathleen has a master's degree in leadership and a master's certification in values-based leadership. She is a training partner with the Barrett Values Center, is certified in the human element, and a certified passion test facilitator. She's a past associate faculty member in the School of Leadership at Royal Roads University in Victoria, British Columbia, and currently an adjunct faculty member at George Washington University in Washington, D.C., and a member of the SoCal Association of the Transformation Leadership Council. Kathleen has 3 children, 2 cats, and 2 puppies. She consults globally and lives in Salmon Arm, British Columbia, Canada. Kathleen, welcome to the show.
Good to see you, Ravi. Thank you. I'm cracking up. I'm cracking up over the 2 dogs, 2 puppies, and 2 cats. It's yeah.
That's, I think that makes it very special, honestly. A puppy, and it is life-changing, to be honest.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Yes.
And Kathleen, you and I go way back. We first met about 10 years ago in a Jack Canfield event, Train the Trainer event, where you are facilitating multiple sessions. Most importantly, that the one that really, hit me hard and stayed with me is what you did with passion test. When you conducted, how to go about identifying your passions, the steps that that we should be following. That really stuck with me, and you and I have been in touch on and off after that, and I know you're a very strong proponent of values, and especially when you talk about leadership, let's talk about the current situation that we are in this world, because everybody, as you're aware, the current pandemic has upset almost everybody's lives. All companies got impacted, the countries got impacted, and the individuals got impacted, families got impacted, beyond anybody could imagine. And some were able to survive easily, and some were not.
Right.
And probably for some, it was quite intuitive, some it was not. I want to pick your brain a little bit to see, how do you see this? This whole pandemic, and how some were able to come out of it, victorious, I would say, and some came out with it with a lot of bruises. And has leadership got to do anything with this, especially the personal leadership, in your opinion? So I thought, I'll just take your views on what do you think?
Well, I think a lot about it, clearly. But there's a few things like, yeah, some people really thrived and others didn't. But one thing that's for sure that happened with the global pandemic, in my thinking, is it caused everyone to sort of refocus on survival needs, health and survival and financial stability, really foundational needs. Everyone sort of was, no matter what position they were in, whether they were a very wealthy business person or a frontline worker, everybody had the same shock to the system because there was so much unknown. And without getting into any of the politics of it or going down that rabbit hole, really it kind of shook us all and reawakened us to explore, what really is important. So on a global scale, we can say that we all were retracted. We all were in what I call a retrograde, kind of backwards, going, what's going to happen for my survival, my family, my health, and my safety. And now that we're sort of moved a little bit through it, we I think we're overly optimistic, but that's my own little pragmatic point of view. We think we're over it, and then we're not until we have a global solution. I think we're going to constantly be struggling with this, and it really is an opportunity for, I think, global leadership to say we need each other. We have to cooperate because we are a global community, and we interact with each other. And some of the sort of more wealthy countries have more options than the less. And it doesn't matter. It's the grand equalizer in some ways. And I'm not going to get into sort of, again, the politics of it, because that's just a crazy rabbit hole. But really, the past year and a half was really about fearing for safety, health. And then the next step, in my opinion, for leadership is learning how to bring people together again, where our systems have been shocked, our beliefs have been challenged, and we become more divisive. Yet, this is why I'm so passionate about values. We're all values driven, right? But it's consciously looking at those values. Our values can connect us, but it's the belief around those values that can divide us. So as a leader, it's our job now to create conditions where people can re-engage with each other, be it in person in the workplace. Some workplaces are getting back, boots on the ground, face to face. Frontline workers and service workers have always had to stay out there in the front line. But we're looking at how do we bring people back together with this new context and this new charge and this new increase in diversity. How do I, as a leader, connect people through values? And well, I think they can connect through values. And pre-pandemic, there's a real over focus on things like performance, control, and hierarchy organizationally. And now post-COVID, optimistically saying post-COVID, really looking to more adaptability, teamwork, information sharing, and agility. How do I do that? How do I bring that out in people as a leader? And it's going to take a lot of more like empathy, courage, openness, and innovation. Those are the things that we're called to do. So that feels like a little bit of a fluffy answer, but essentially, I think this shock to our systems really had us all question, what's really important to me, what's important to you, and what should be important to us. That's all kind of changing. Does that resonate at all with you as a leader of many?
Yep, absolutely, Kathleen. I think you picked up on many important issues right there. One of the things, let me talk about it before we get in the leadership topic, is, as the pandemic hit us, especially in the services industry, which I am part of, right? Especially in a country like India, everybody was working from office before the pandemic hit. And within 3 to 6 weeks of pandemic hitting us, everybody was forced to work from home. It
Mhm.
was a major paradigm shift, right? In the way we were working, the way we were approaching the work, and the way we were connecting. And what happened was, I'll just share with you my experience and our industry experience. Is that initially when the people were all very happy, back to be to be happy with the family, and hey, I get to interleave family life with the work life, and
Mhm.
best of both worlds, all of that. And productivity went up. Believe it or not, productivity went up significantly. Then as the months went by, it started wearing on people, right? People were slowly getting suffocated, I feel, right? And now people said, you know what, no. I need little bit of me time. I want some office time. I want to be back in the office, not full time, but at least part of the time I want to be back in the office. One of the common messages that I've been hearing in the industry, in the services industry, is that people are really getting burnt out because they didn't have anything else to do. They worked and worked and worked and worked,
Mhm.
and they started getting burnt out. I mean, that is one of the theories that came out, and a lot of the people did share their experiences with me. Now, what is your take on that? Right now, this is a behavioral, I would say, thing that happened. I don't think any of us anticipated. We were forced to get into 100% from 100% work from office to 100% work from home. There was
Mhm.
nothing in between. Unlike the Western world, where people do occasionally work from home and all of that, right? It was nothing in
Right.
between. In India, kind of country like India, it was all brand new. That kind of
Right.
hit people, from different angles. I just wanted to get your perspective on this whole work from home, finding the balance, and also burning out, family
Mhm.
time, work time, right? What is the kind of personal leadership that people should be looking at to to balance these things out?
Well, but you've got a lot packed into that question. And what I think it has to do with, there's a lot about balance. You're talking about balance and burnout.
Mm-hmm.
But also, what to me, what it kind of focus is in on is boundaries, and learning how to have healthy boundaries with the workplace and with your spouse, with your children, as well as yourself. And first of all, I'll talk about balance for a minute, because I think balance is really an illusion. It's a lie we tell ourselves that we can become balanced, and we stay there. If you think about this, anyone who's watching this, I invite you to stand on one foot. And, I can't see you, but this is a great experiment. But stand on one foot. And when you feel like you're balanced, just raise your hand. And most people raise their hand after, 2 or 3 seconds of kind of wobbling. And then I say, well, notice what your foot's doing. It's still correcting.
Yes.
So we're always correcting to have balance. If we have this illusion that we're going to be completely balanced, that's called dead. Nothing new in, nothing going out. That's a flat line. We don't want that. So balance is a dynamic experience, for one thing. And burnout it comes when we feel as though we're overcommitted, right? We're overcommitted, possibly to things that aren't giving us sort of life-giving energy, sucking us dry, so to speak. And the only cure, in my opinion, to achieve some sort of illusion of balance and to not achieve burnout is to have boundaries. And those boundaries are more, we're called more to have those when we're working from home. I've worked from home for years. So I've learned to turn it off at 5 o'clock. Every now and then I do, evening work or very, very early morning work, because I work in the Pacific time zone. And I speak to people like you. I have a client in Singapore. I work with people in Washington, D.C. So I manage around that. But I do have a clear boundary. When my day is over, I don't check my email. And also when I share my daughter with my ex-husband, and when she's home, she knows she doesn't get to interrupt me. And I used to let her interrupt me all the time and just, whatever you need. And I had to learn to say, no, you don't do that with your dad. And he goes to the office. So this is my space. But then I also, at the end of the day, need to engage fully and be present. And so we can do a number of things with our head. I could feel guilty in my mind. Any of us, when you're at home working and you're working on a big project, Ravi, and it's an all-nighter. Sometimes that happens, like you're in a senior leadership position. It happens. And in the back of your mind, you could be feeling guilty. I should be doing this. I should be doing that. So your mind really isn't present to the work. And then when you do what you should be doing and you go engage with your family, you're thinking, I should be doing work. So you're not present to that either. So recognizing on how to have a boundary to be present to the moment of work and present when you're with your kids and your spouse. It's not about the quantity, it's the quality. It's the being focused and grounded. And I heard you say, and I know that you just got a puppy, and I did too. And the one thing I've learned from my dogs is they're in the moment. And that's teaching me as well. Wherever I am, I'm present in the moment. If my mind is thinking about what's going on outside the door, then I'm not giving my all to this space. And then and the same happens with your spouse. And sometimes if you're always choosing work over family, that's unhealthy, and your family can become resentful to you. And if you're always choosing family or work, that's not going to work either for ongoing employment. So here's the key to boundaries is nobody has to respect your boundaries. You don't have to tell anyone your boundaries. Only you have to respect them. And you can make a conscious choice to not. But if it comes from awareness, that's where your power is as a leader, just a human. Like leadership is a behavior, it's not a role, right? We're all leaders of our own lives. So respecting that, that you have boundaries, you might violate them, but that's your choice. Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense. Leadership is a behavior, not a role. That's, Kathleen, most of the people, they confuse what leadership is all about because, there are so many people talking about leadership and, people confuse leadership with management. And, now that you touched upon the definition of leadership, let's go back to, discussing the definition of leadership itself and your take on the concept of leadership.
Oh, okay. So this is how I see leadership. I invite people to consider it. It might work for you, it might not. But for me, what's essential to effective leadership is to master your integrity and your authenticity. So integrity is walking your talk, following through on what you're going to say, following through on what you say you're going to do. And authenticity is becoming predictable and transparent. So people know who you are, but that only comes from you knowing who you are. So mastering your integrity and authenticity and being committed to something bigger than yourself. And but it's not all that. It's a balancing your self-interest and common good. You have to take care of yourself and others. And if one gets overweighted, that's where we hit burnout, right? If something, it's a balance. Again, that elusive balance. Sometimes I got to take care of myself. Sometimes I've got to give to others. But as a leader, we have to learn when that's appropriate. But knowing that if we don't take care of ourselves, we can't serve others. And also, if all we do is take care of ourselves, we're not leading. It's very self-directed. So understanding your integrity and authenticity, and this forms the foundation for the effective practice of leadership. And I use that word practice very intentionally because leadership is a practice. We're never there. It's not, I can go to school, I can learn to be a leader, and I'm a leader. Leadership comes through wisdom. And we can be super smart, but if we haven't applied that knowledge into the practical world, we have no wisdom. And so leadership is a practice. We're constantly learning. It's like medicine is a practice. Your doctor practices medicine. Sometimes if you need surgery, you'd like to be with a doctor who's practiced more than others, quite possibly. And so this practice, if you know who you are, the practice becomes your natural self-expression. So I hope I didn't lose you in that definition, but it's really understanding who you are, balancing self-interest and common good, and knowing that it's an ongoing practice, but it's your natural self-expression. And I'm going to give one example of what I mean by that, and it'll really land for people. So if I squeeze an orange, this is a quiz for you, Ravi. If I squeeze an orange, what comes out of it?
Juice.
What kind of juice?
Orange juice.
Or not apple juice?
No, orange juice.
Why not?
Because
Because
isn't that?
that's what's inside. Exactly. So as a leader, if we know what's inside, what's driving us, when we're under pressure, that's what comes out. So why leadership is a practice is because when we get squeezed and things come out that we go, where did that come from? That's an opportunity to look at ourselves and say, wait a minute, what am I believing in this moment that might not be true? And this response might not be serving me anymore. So it's like, what's inside? And as a leader, we have to really understand what's driving us and understand how to lead the self. Because what's inside is what comes out when we're under pressure. And we saw that with COVID, like this massive pressure on us all. How did you respond? And not looking back in a way, if we weren't perfect, to say, oh, I'm, a poor leader. It's like, what could I do differently? What could I learn from that? So the next time the pressure comes, I can manage what's going on inside of me more effectively to achieve the greater good.
Wow. So you hit it on the head, I think. So
I hope so. I hope that landed.
Since you mentioned squeeze and what is inside, it comes out, right? Usually you think about it, right? People, all of us, we're all humans, and we erupt at sometimes, right? Something inside, it is really boiling, and somebody says something triggers, and you explode. Right. And what you're saying is that's okay. But how do you go back inside and start managing that? So
Right.
that you become a better and better human being and a leader. That's what you're getting at. Okay.
Yeah. And do you want me to go a little deeper on that or
Yeah, please.
Okay. Because if we can leave people with some practical tools.
Yeah.
So it's really questioning the story you're telling yourself. It's questioning your belief. And this will feel familiar to you. Events happen, right? Things happen in our life that are neutral.
Yep.
We respond to the events in however we respond. But it's the space between the event and the response. That's where our power lies. And if we look at, what am I believing in that moment that caused the trigger? Because the trigger's yours. It's your trigger, nobody else's. What am I believing in that moment that triggers me? And you can examine that belief and say that, that just isn't true anymore. Or it is true, whatever it is, it leads to the response that we have. So if we can get present to that moment and say, like, for example, a guy that I coach, he asked me to shadow him for a day. And because his team told him he's a senior leader in a government here in Canada, I won't say what province, but his team keep telling him he's control freak. They can't speak up. He's angry, and he's like, I don't feel angry. So I'm at a meeting with him, and I notice people are disagreeing with something he's saying, and I could see it get him worked up, and suddenly he just slams his fist on the table, and it's going to be my way. That's what he said. And I said, okay, everyone stop. And they're all like, what's going to happen here? And I said, how does everyone feel in the room right now? Do you feel like you could tell them what you really think? And they're like, is this a trick? Are we on candid camera? What's happening? I said, no, really, he wants to work on this. So what's happening right now? Well, I don't feel like speaking up. So I said to him, what happened? What was happening right before you pounded your fist? He goes, well, I don't know. I was just getting mad. Well, what happened right before that? And he said, well, they were challenging me. They were questioning me. Oh, okay. It's a trigger for you that you're being questioned. Mm-hmm. Why? Well, I'm the leader. I should know everything. Well, that's a belief. That's bunk. That isn't true. How many of you in this room think that he has to have answers to everything? Nobody. So it's about learning how to question that, and then noticing what happens in your body right before you have the heat, and then questioning that belief, and then doing something different, or like you question it, say, well, that's not true right anymore for me. And we're always going to get triggered again, because leadership in life is a practice. We don't know how we've done until we die. And then who knows, whatever you believe happens after, we can have another round. I don't know. But on this present life, we evolve. So we can notice the triggers more quickly. We can notice bigger space between the triggers. And when we get triggered again, we can say, oh, that habit hasn't happened to me in like 6 minutes, 6 months, or 6 years. And we can measure the progress if we're willing to look at the hotspot and question it. And that takes courage. And that's what we need in leaders today, is the courage to say, I don't know the answer. We're navigating completely new territory. Who cares about best practices? We need to develop next practices. There's no one single answer. 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2 anymore. And it's having the courage to ask those questions in the moment in front of other people and be authentic and vulnerable.
Wow. Now, this is, Kathleen, the moment you talked about this particular example, I realized, right, what are my trigger points? So many, I think, it is very, I would say, I think, the point, if I understood you correctly, those are the, whatever triggers you to respond or react rather than respond in a certain way, you're saying it like, observe what you did and go back and say, you know what, why did I do what I did? And it triggered me. And, that is being honest with yourself to question that and, train yourself to be a better person. That's what leadership is all about. Yeah.
And even a better way to phrase it to yourself, like sometimes when we use the word why, there's even on ourselves, we feel this need to defend. But just say, what was I thinking at that moment? And what was I believing?
Mm-hmm.
And is what I did going to get me closer to what I want or further away? And that takes courage, because we're challenging our thinking. We're rethinking our thinking. And these old patterns that we had aren't going to serve us going forward if we want to evolve. And then as a leader, we set the tone. We like the culture of any organization is a reflection of the leader's values, hands down. Whatever's happening on the front line is a reflection of what started at the top. So if there's a tiny crack on the top, internally or between, it's the Grand Canyon on the front line. That's why leadership, those in leadership roles, in my opinion, should be committed to self-examination and to questioning and to humility and to recognize that, we can both be an expert and an imposter at the same time, because we're navigating into new territory. How can I hold those two ideas at once? And holding those two ideas at once requires that I engage those around me to find the way forward. And that takes courage to say, I'm not quite sure.
Yeah. So being honest and having that humility.
Humility is a big one.
It is very big, very big. I agree. Okay, so Kathleen, now that you're talking about these finer aspects of leadership, see, you are one. I have observed a lot of leaders, right? What the thing that is very unique to you, in my opinion, is the way you're taking the concept of leadership, concept of values, concept of passion, how you're integrating all of that, and making it a more holistic. When you talk about a leader, the person becomes more holistic leader if he or she were to kind of integrate all three. Can you just talk about that, address that, and what can the audience learn from this particular aspect?
Sure. Yeah, and you also earlier, I remember you talked a little bit about management, leadership, and I think this is all going to come together with that. So what I firmly believe with every human, but I work mostly with people in leadership roles, so let's just call them leaders. But we have what's called a core motivation. We have a driving thing within us that is some would call it our purpose in our life. And that's at the very deep core of us. And over top of that, I think are our values. And our values underpin everything that we do. They're the silent motivators. You can see what someone values by their behavior, okay? Mm-hmm. But the next layer, though, on top of the values are our passions. And our passions are those little energetic containers that allow us to express our values. And then on top of our passions, maybe we'll have to do a diagram, but on top of our passions are our goals. And our goals are the tangible way that we render our passions practical, and they're how we manifest that core motivation of ours. And so we have those tangible goals that are moving us towards a vision. And think of that individually. And when we're walking down the street or leading or doing our life and we get triggered or we get inspired, some energy comes alive in us. It's either a sort of a positive, oh, I like this energy, or I don't like this energy. Usually that's expressed through passion, right? Either or ah. And if you go a little bit deeper, there's a value underneath that. Anything that triggers us, generally it's triggering a value of ours. It might be our value of respect, our value of time, our value of openness, whatever it is. If something has heat, that's where the passion comes out. Or if something really we feel so aligned with, it's because it's a value being expressed or bumped up against. And that's how I see it fitting. We have this deep core motivation, and it's covered by our values that then are expressed or felt through our passion, rendered practical through our goals, and we're pulled forward back into that core motivation through our vision. So I see it as sort of a hierarchy, and we can bounce back and forth. And it's our beliefs. Our beliefs are the stories that we tell ourselves that can get in the way of our natural self-expression, is these old patterns or these fears or these stories about what a leader is, stories about how we define success, that if we're not sort of living that story that we had, we're somehow a failure or we're a success. And the world, this is like this awesome and horrible reset for the globe to say what's really important to us and what is our path forward.
Yeah.
And what do we need to, as every leader should question, what surprised me about myself through the pandemic? What was a delightful surprise? And what kind of scared the bejeebers out of me about myself? That will show you the direction to go and what to work on. What about my organization? And what about the world? And with that information, we can find a path forward. I really believe that a leader of any organization has the potential to touch so many lives. That's where the work needs to start, is leading the self.
Wow. Leading the self. Okay, so again, Kathleen, thank you for painting that picture for us about your purpose and motivation, the values. It's almost like you peel the onion, and finally, what the core that you get is your true life purpose and motivation, I guess. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
That's it. That's exactly it.
Yeah. So talking about that, at least in our industry, in IT industry, our services industry in general, the way people move up the hierarchy is people join at the lowest cadre. They they do the work, right, towards, yeah. And then slowly they move up the managerial cadre, right? Now they end up managing few people, then managing the teams of teams. It goes up, and finally you're called a leader. Now in this whole thing, one of the things that gets missed out is the proper training on the leadership itself, right? People get trained on management, right? Mm-hmm. Training on leadership, it's a very different task. And most importantly, the way you explained, leadership is not at that level. After certain times, the leadership doesn't come. Leadership starts from day one, right? So can you just help people help clarify these two, management and leadership, and mm-hmm. what should people be focusing on in whatever phase of the career they are in, to build up their career, the leadership qualities?
Yeah. So this is, again, just the way I see it. I'm open to not being right, but so management really is about getting things done, right? We would agree. Yep. A good manager is someone who's has high productivity, low waste of time, getting things done, marking things off the list, success. Wow, we should promote them into a leadership role. And then a lot of times people who are really good at getting stuff done aren't really good at leading people. Because you're right, we do have a lot of training to teach people how to become good managers, efficiencies, total quality management programs, all that kind of stuff, all those systems and processes to, follow step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, deliver this at a certain time and you're good.
And
but what we don't
measure management, you can measure the output.
That's right, the output. But when we go into a leadership role, I say leadership is a long game. So our success isn't measured day to day, and it's measured over the longer period of time. It's how can we engage the hearts and hands and minds of the people to a common good and bring out the best in them, which is bringing out their own leadership capacity to step up when they need to. And so people who haven't made that shift, who measure their success by what they can produce, get lost. And sometimes they become over controllers or micromanagers, or they have a difficult time delegating because they need to go back and accomplish something to feel like they got something done. So it's that shifting the frame of what success is. It's really difficult. So I often encourage leaders who are people who are transitioning from management to leadership to really pay attention to that and to look at, are there other spaces in your life where you can feel some level of daily success, like train to run a marathon, something like that you can measure, sort of feed that need to know that you're making progress. But sometimes when we go back into the inability to delegate or we micromanage, it's our own needs that haven't been met. It's our own lack of self-confidence to know that leadership really is a long game. And you don't know, it's more generatively complex. Like management is, you're driving your car, you run out of gas, you put gas in the car, it's fixed, the problem is solved.
Yep.
But in leadership, it's more like, think about parenting. You never know along the way how you're doing until maybe your expiration date. But it's a longer, the things you do here, you might not be able to see it tug at the other end of the string. The other end of the string might not move for days, months, years. And we have to be in the space of knowing that what we're doing is the right thing. And to have that just understanding your own motivations when you go back into control. And sometimes we have to take control. If the building is burning down, Ravi, the fire chief doesn't say, hey, Bob, do you feel like holding a hose or climbing the ladder today? It's like, you do this, you do this, you do this, but every day isn't a fire. And if we haven't got sort of ourself in check, we create emergencies to make us feel good that we're accomplishing something. So
this is I think a very impactful definition that you just gave all of us, to move on the direction of the leadership, right? And also the clarity between management and leadership. Thank you for giving us that clarity. Now, I know we have spent a lot of time. So let me just ask one question, Kathleen, coming back to you. Okay.
Okay.
Your company is massivelyhuman.com. Okay, that's your website. That's very, very attractive, very, at the same time, very intriguing. Can you tell us, where you came, why did you name your, website and company like that, Massively Human? What's the motivation behind that?
There was two. It started out with not wanting my name to be the brand in the beginning. Okay. So that was way back when I changed it from Kathleen Seeley to the Seeley Group Consulting. And then I went, that's not quite right. And then what I noticed over working with leadership over time is we just need to be human. We need to be fragile and vulnerable and adaptable and authentic and strong and all these things at the same time. We just really need to be, the more people see your leader as a human. I remember when I first saw my teacher in a grocery store, I'm like, what are you doing shopping? You're my teacher. But we see them as human. And then leaders, in my opinion, need to be massively human. And they almost in a superpower way of being able to create conditions for people to rise up. And massively human leadership is just that. It's creating spaces where I am secure enough in myself that you can be great, and that we move forward when I hold others up. So that's where massively human leadership comes from. My logo is a thumbprint. And if you notice, if you look really close, it's the globe, but it's turned on its side. And I think we need to turn the world on its side, flip it to
Not
lead.
upside down.
Yeah, so it's a very deep, and yet just being massively human, it really engages people, because that's what leadership is. It's connecting that, that self-interest with common good. So that's where that came from.
Wow. Thank you so much for
Thank you for asking.
So okay, then now let me see if I can put you on the spot and ask you a question.
Oh,
if you were to pick some top 3 things that people should focus on to improve their leadership quality or leadership, how do I put it? In general, how do they improve their leadership life? What are the 3 things that they should be doing to become better leaders?
well, I think what comes to my mind is embracing silence more, being quiet more and still more. That might, I don't know how that sounds to you, but just really being able to allow for insight to come. And insight comes only when space has been created. And we often get stuck in the doing, and we get lost in no being. And so being more quiet. And I love the expression that it's the space between the bars that holds the tiger, and the silence between the notes that makes the music. So I think one important thing to do is create space for silence to allow for insight. And that also will help circling back with burnout. Just sort of like pausing long enough to notice what's around you. So that's one thing. The second thing is to have the courage to confront your thinking, and rethinking, to me, is one of the top leadership skills, the ability to question how I see the world. And I might leave with this one, just with 2. A third one, well, I'll make a light third one, is be willing, and I'm going to go back to number 2, be willing to be vulnerable, to not know. And what does it cost you to act like you know? There's a huge cost in pretending you know. And as a leader, you don't have to have all the answers. It's no longer a formula. 1 + 1 = 2. The question is 1 + 1 what? And that requires us to be vulnerable and not know. But I'll go back to number 2, is question your beliefs. And I will share one of my favorite quotes that helped me with this is Carl Jung said, "You cannot live out the afternoon of one's life according to the program of life's morning. For what was true in the morning, in the evening has become a lie."
Wow.
The learning to question is the greatest leadership skill. Rethink your thinking. And remember, as a leader, you never touch somebody so lightly that you do not leave a trace. You never touch someone so lightly you do not leave a trace. So be mindful and intentional about how you interact with people. And that can only come from allowing yourself that space to be quiet and get grounded, questioning your beliefs, and just inviting that the potential that you don't have all the answers. I'll interrupt you, because if you understand your values, if you know your values, what drives you, then you can understand your behavior. And if you're not getting what you want, it's generally because you have a belief around a value that isn't serving you.
Can you repeat that, Kathleen, please?
Yeah, it's learning to question your beliefs, because when you're triggered, generally it's a belief around a value that's not serving you. And I'll give you a really great example is, for example, when I have shared with you, I got divorced, and the value of family is universal, globally universal. That's a value, but it's the context, the belief and the behavior around family where we differ. And this is, I'm going to make this connection to leadership and organizations, I promise. But my ex-husband said, our kids are going to be messed up because they should have two parents that live together. And I said, well, that's your belief about family. And you can hold on to that belief about family, and we're still getting divorced. So you might want to question that belief. You can hold on to it, but reality isn't such that we're going to be married anymore. So he had to realign his belief system around family. Okay. We can hold on to something that's not serving us and just create angst and frustration, or we can say, you know, what's serving me. And for a leader, this is how it works in organizations. Like we all have, there's what I call an objective truth, the fact that we can see, taste, touch. Like Bob makes $50,000 a year, right? We can all see his paycheck. And then there's a objective truth, subjective truth, about that is our opinion about it, right? That's my thought, my belief about that $50,000. But in organizations and as leaders, we need to get to a place that's called inner subjective truth, where we all agree on what that means to all of us. And think about the value of respect. It might look different to you and me. It might be a different behavior. So you don't have to leave your value of respect at the door, and neither do I. But together in organizations, we need to decide, what does it mean to us, and how are we going to engage in a way that we live the value of respect? So again, circling back, it's questioning that belief or that story about the value. The value doesn't have to change, but our beliefs might be old. They might not serve us. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Because, the way you just explained, this whole leadership is all about, constantly questioning our beeliefs and, making adjustments. As you said, balance, right? Keep on, questioning, keep on, question and, reinventing ourselves. And as you said, probably the silence is the one that will give us that space required for us to do an introspection, become a better version of ourselves. Probably.
Yeah.
This is very nice. Yeah. Thank you so much. I know
we've
run out of time now, Kathleen. But again, I'm truly grateful, for your time. I know you're a very busy person. You're heading.
As are you.
Yeah. So I will. In terms of, I will definitely put it on the comment section, and also when I do the the post editing. I know that a lot of people who watch this video would probably want to connect with you, probably understand, your services better, and probably there is a mutual opportunity for everybody. If they want to reach out to you to understand more, what would be the best way to reach out to you?
The best way is info@massivelyhuman.com. Okay. And also you can drop in there's a link. You might drop in to do a free value survey to understand values. That gets you into my spaces as well. But if you just go info@massivelyhuman.com, I saw you talking to Ravi. Let's talk. I'll get back in touch with you. That'd be fun.
Yep.
Yeah.
And also you were, see, one thing that I really liked about, what you're doing is, you had mentioned, in one of the calls, that how you take the values off the wall and put it into practice.
Oh, yes. So yeah, the values, thank you, it's beyond words on a wall. And that's how we work with leaders and organizations, is to really question what you have on the wall, and is it embodied? Are you living it? Is it serving you? So values really have to go beyond the words on the wall. And that's how we work with leadership development and culture transformation. We want everyone to have a piece of that and to be committed to it.
Wow. I will come back to you, but again,
thank you.
Thank you.